All right, now that you know the basics of weaving, I'm going to show you some ways to weave in shapes or patterns into your weaving. I'm going to start out by making a square with this purple yarn in the middle. It takes a lot of planning and calculating, so before you start weaving anything, make sure you count your warp threads and make sure that you're centered and that it's symmetrical if you're going for a geometric shape. So you'll notice I didn't start at the top of my loom and I didn't start all the way to the left. I counted in where I wanted my square to begin, and that's where I have that tail leaving off. And I'm only weaving the parts that I want my square to cover, so I'm leaving the other warp strings blank for now. I'll fill those in with a different color later. So I'm going to just weave back and forth in this space that I've created for myself. Because I'm going for a square, I want it to be just as long as it is wide. So in order to get that length, I need to be using my fork to push this up into itself, because sometimes it's a little bit deceiving as you're weaving. If you're not compressing it, it looks like it's longer than it really is, and then once it gets compacted, it starts to skew out of proportion. So that's why I like to just kind of push it all in as I go. That way I have a good idea of where my proportions are at. You'll notice I have two loose ends hanging here where I started and where I left off. I'm just going to leave these for now. And then next up I'm going to get a different color and I'm going to weave around this square. I'm starting at the top, just like I would a normal weaving. I'll tuck that away so that I can resolve that later. And I'm just weaving back and forth. I want to fill in the space around that purple square, starting at the top. I want to be mindful of how thick this orange border is, because it's going to go on the side of the square as well, and I've noticed I have two warp strings to the right and two to the left. I don't really have control over how wide I can make it there, so I'm basically going to make this part as long as it is wide on the sides, just so that my border is even. Okay, I'm going to start weaving this orange down on the side of this purple. You'll notice if I just weave on these two warp strings, I will have a gap, and so I need to include this third warp string here where it's connected with the purple. So I'm going to part the ways here so I can thread in between those two pieces of purple yarn, and then I'll go back the other way. And you'll just continue that process, making sure that these two colors are interlocked. So I'm just going to continue to work my way down until every row of purple is interlaced with this other color. Let me show you what can go wrong if you're not interlocking those colors. This is one of my first tries at making shapes. I tried making this diamond, I didn't measure it out well, and I didn't lock that purple into that pink, and you can see I've got a big gap here. So it's important to make sure those colors interlock and that you plan accordingly and measure it out. Alright, going back to my weaving, I'm going to move my way all the way down until I run out of orange yarn. You have a few different options when it comes to transitioning to colors. Like I showed you in the other video, you can just leave it hanging off the edge and tuck it in the side later, or you can tie it on to the next piece of thread. Or in this case, I'm just leaving it in the middle, and then later I'll go back in and trim the excess off. I'm going to pick it up at the top and work my way down. So just like I did before, I'm going to interlock this orange color with the purple on the very edge there. In this case, I'm leaving my thread hanging off of the edge of my loom, and I'm going to pull that through one of the tunnels later to keep it from unraveling. Alright, I'm pretty sure that's my last row of orange. I'm just counting my rows to make sure they're even. Now that I'm good to go, I like to resolve the end by just tucking it in through this loop here. And if I have loose ends in the middle, I just cut them off. But if I have flyaways on the end, I prefer just tucking them down through any kind of tunnel like that, and then I'll be good to go. Sometimes it comes out a little wonky, which is why I like to use my fork to just kind of even it out to the shape I like. You can use this method to make any shapes you want. Here I just have a checkerboard. You can see how those colors are interlaced. This next example I'm going to show you is a little bit different from the other one in that I'm not going to start by creating a shape in the middle. I'm going to start at the very top and create some triangles working my way down. In order to create that triangle shape, I'll just need to stagger inward as I go. So I'm going to go one over, that's where I'm going to stop weaving right there. When I get to the next row, I will stop at the next closest warp thread and I'll just have it stair step down gradually into a diagonal line. Now I'm going to switch colors to make a separate triangle to contrast that first one. So I'm going to pull my yarn through, and this way it's going to be a little bit different. I'll just let it be straight, but I'll tuck it in with my fork and it will just follow the contour of that last triangle edge. Then I'll go back in to make the tip of my triangle, which will be the longest row of yellow. I'll tuck that in, and then every row after that will stagger in diagonally so I have a triangle pointing the opposite direction. Here you can see I just continued that pattern of going back and forth between this blue and yellow color with triangles going in the opposite direction. You might end with kind of a slanted line like this edge right here, you'll notice is going diagonally. So there's not a problem with that. All I'm going to do is just tug and pull this yarn in different directions with my fork, and as I push at it I can get that straight edge that I want. Alright, now that my weaving is complete, I'm ready to take it off the loom. I'll take you through that process in my next video and show you how to resolve your weaving.